Fly the woodland, raise...
Boy, here's the place. Here's the place I've been searching for. This is where you do your work.
Oh, but Uncle, I'm so weary.
Now, stop this chattering and get on with the work.
But we can't shift a stone that side. It'll take outside help.
Pantomime, a stage turned into Aladdin's cave of surprise and magic. That's what the Victorians and Edwardians wanted when they went to the theatre. Magic, a taste catered for by lavish pantomime productions, which weren't complete without the spectacle of a transformation scene.
But Uncle, it's filthy. It's...
Of course, nowadays, most pantomimes are all TV stars and pop songs. But not here. Not in the new production at the new Tyne Theatre in Newcastle. Here, in a theatre which has seen quite a few magical transformations of its own, we're to be treated to a transformation scene from the greatest days of English pantomime.
He's gone. The cave is dark and dingy, and of course, I'm feeling stingy. For when a man's found the lamp, I leave him down there in the damp.
Take the lamp with me, and voices. Voices all round me, and yet I can't see anyone at all. Shall we try? I'm almost afraid. Not quite, but very nearly. Take the lamp, they said. But what lamp, though? I'll strike a match.
This was once one of the highlights of Christmas. Indeed, in 1906, this very scene took place here at the Tyne Theatre in Newcastle in a version of Aladdin that starred Harry Lauder as Wishy Washy and a lady called Bessie of Featherstone as the lad himself. And then somewhere at the back of the chorus was a young man called Stan Loddle. The fact that it can be restaged in 1981 is due to two things: the band of enthusiasts who've recently brought this old theatre back to life, and the preservation in working order of the Victorian timber machinery.
This theatre is the finest of its kind anywhere in the world. It is the last example of a complete English Victorian wooden stage, complete and in working order.
It's Jack Dixon who's revived Aladdin this year in much the same way that he saved this theatre from demolition during the 1970s. The transformation scene he performed at the time was from a cinema that had seen better days, the Stoll. The building had succumbed to the seductions of the silver screen soon after that original Harry Lauder production of Aladdin, one of a spate of live theatres converted to picture palaces just after the First World War. But before that, this was the Tyne Theatre and Opera House, and it could stage you anything from a Harry Lauder pantomime to a Wagner opera. It was opened in 1867, under the managership of George Stanley, the first of 5 managers who were as proud of the Tyne Theatre as Jack Dixon is today, and who ran it successfully for more than 50 years. In those early days, it promised its audiences the best acoustics, the latest in ventilation, a big problem in the days of gas lighting. With its seating capacity of 1,500, it was larger than the Theatre Royal across the city, with which it was to remain in friendly rivalry for over half a century. Now, it may have been bigger and better equipped than the Theatre Royal, but the Tyne Theatre was much more down to earth.
The kind of entertainment he put on was the kind of entertainment which appealed to everybody. You'd be surprised how popular opera was with the working class at that time. The melodramatic plays of people like George R. Sims, etc., who later was writing, churning out plays of the melodramatic type that were put on here, like Lights of London, which made him a fortune. These kind of plays were very, very popular indeed. Next door to it, there was the old Westgate Music Hall, which was absorbed into the Tyne Theatre. Eventually it was used as the promenade, and I can remember even having meals there in fairly recent times when it was absorbed and became part of the theatre itself. it was the restaurant part. It's now a disco, and if you look outside at the stage door, you'll see that the stage door itself is high, and you're able to move in and out the stage scenery, which again was a very important part of it. So that the place itself was, from the very beginning, from Stanley's point of view, he was trying very hard to be a rival to the Theatre Royal, but I think he was struggling.
But right from the beginning, pantomime was this theatre's speciality. Now, to prove the point, one of Tyneside's most famous folk songs is not really a folk song at all. It's the theme music of the pantomime specially written for this theatre at Christmas 1867. The name of that song is The Lambton Worm. The transformation scene in The Lambton Worm was so complex that the theatre had to be closed for several days in order, said the Daily Chronicle, to properly rehearse the dazzling scientific effects of the electrical transformation scene. Well, it obviously worked, because the theatre's drama critic described the effect as elegant and gorgeous. The vast bower of foliage and flowers, radiant with all the hues of the rainbow, marvellously realised by the scientific employment of the limelight. The applause was so thunderous that they had to bring on the scenic artist, Mr. Browning, to take a bow.
Well, you must remember, of course, that in those days there was no television, so you couldn't cut from here to there and everything. And so what the people saw in the theatre was like a different world to them completely. And this developed really from Greek times, believe it or not, and the technique gathered momentum and went on, and in the Victorian period certainly reached its heyday.
Well, down here it's a maze of woodwork, and someone who doesn't know the underneath of a Victorian theatre would be completely lost. I'm lost myself. What are these bridges, first of all, that you're leaning against?
Yeah, well, we've got 4 of these here, which is a fairly standard setup in any Victorian theatre. And they can be used for raising sets or raising groups of people, especially in spectaculars like pantomimes and burlesques. And also, of course, you can make things disappear in the view of the public, which of course they love.
So, in fact, a whole chunk of floor just either rises or falls down into this pit below the stage?
That's it, yes. In fact, you can lose, as it were, 14 feet of scenery down here, which is quite considerable and certainly larger than any other Victorian stage machinery that I've, in fact, seen.
I think the piece of Victorian stage machinery that most people would know most about are the traps. They'll have heard about those, the demon traps and what have you. What traps does this theatre have?
Well, it's an absolute maze, actually, but at the front of the stage we've got 2 demon traps. These are the ones where the baddie appears or disappears in the pantomime. They're only 22 inches square, so they're pretty tight to get up and down on.
So when they were casting, they always had to have small baddies?
Well, yeah, that's right. And in fact, that seems to be a standard size. I've measured a lot of these type of traps, and they all seem to be 22 inches square. I don't know why. They must have been smaller in those days or something. Then we've got a grey trap. For obvious reasons, it's the size of a coffin. And you can raise about 3 people on it, so you can make objects appear and disappear. Again, in effect, he works on exactly the same principle as the bridges that we just talked about.
But that would be used for more serious drama as well, would it? I mean, for Hamlet, that would be used as a grave scene.
Absolutely, that's the classic use of it. And then further forward, we've got 3 object traps where you can make objects appear and disappear. They're only really like hinged doors, and you could operate glove puppets from it, or I suppose the baddie could make his head appear or disappear through it, you know, and all that type of trickery.
Like all the great proscenium theatres, of course, it's got a lot of fly space above it as well.
Oh yeah, it's got a colossal area above it. We can put in a stack of lines, and none of them are counterweighted, so you can imagine how hard it was to work on the show in those days. I've got sort of records of people who did work here, and they say that the shows were really desperately heavy and took sometimes 4 men just to pull one backcloth out.
And this was a great disadvantage of them, of course, that they were very labour-intensive, these theatres.
That's right, yes, especially down here. You could use easily 30 men down here, and we probably will be doing shortly in Aladdin. Again, up on the fly gallery, you can use 6 there easily without any problem in one particular part of a show.